It seems crazy to think that Bournemouth are the only club in the Premier League to currently employ Australians of any description. And I think it's fair to say Brad Smith and Adam Federici aren't exactly ripping it up week in, week out. But let's have a look at the all-time Australian 11 that have ever played in the Premier League. Mark Schwarzer. There was certainly competition for this spot, but we're going to go with the mark that wasn't busted for shoveling cocaine up his nose. What can you really say about Mark Schwarzer? He played for his country over 100 times, including at 2 World Cups. He's the only non-Briton to have made more than 500 Premier League appearances, the oldest to have played in the knockout stages of the Champions League, and I bet he never thought he'd be retiring at the Champions of England when he moved to Leicester City at the age of 42. Oh, and he played in the finals of Europa League, or the UEFA Cup if you're old school, for Middlesbrough and Fulham. If that's not maximising the most of what you have to work with, I don't know what is. Brett Emerton. A steady, reliable player for Blackburn Rovers, Brett Emerton was never going to get pulses racing, but he was an important player at Ewood Park. He spent 9 seasons at the club and was just 6 games shy of 300 appearances. For Australia, the defender/midfielder made his debut in 1995 and went on to make 95 appearances for his country, before hanging up his boots internationally in 2012. Lucas Neill. So Lucas Neill's Premier League legacy might be wrapped up in refusing to sign for Liverpool, who were on course for another Champions League final, choosing to dive headfirst into a relegation battle with West Ham for a reported £70,000 a week. However, there was more to him than just that seemingly insane money-driven decision. A versatile defender, he spent 6 years in the Premier League across Blackburn, West Ham and Everton. Possessing a fearless attitude, he was one of Blackburn's most consistent performers for years. At international level, he picked up 95 caps, with 61 of them as captain. Craig Moore. When you find Craig Moore in the best Premier League 11 for anybody, you know you're not exactly spoiled for choice when it comes to defenders. A competent centre-back for his country and up in Scotland, Moore had amassed 52 caps by the time he internationally retired in 2010. He signed for Newcastle United in July 2005, but injuries subsequently destroyed his 2-year spell on Tyneside. When he did get fit, he found it difficult to get back into a defence that consisted of Titus Bramble, Peter Ramage and Stephen Taylor. Like I said, we're not spoiled for choice. Stan Lazaridis. A solid if unspectacular player, Stan Lazaridis made over 200 appearances for Birmingham City after signing for them from West Ham at the turn of the millennium. After helping them to promotion, he was a fixture in their starting 11 for their 4 seasons in the top flight, before leaving for Perth Glory at the age of 33 once relegation was confirmed. He spent 13 years in the international fold, making 60 appearances before retiring after the 2006 World Cup. Richard Garcia. Richard Garcia may not have torn up many trees at West Ham during his 16 Premier League appearances scattered across 3 seasons at Upton Park. However, upon gaining promotion with Hull City in 2008, he proved an important player for the Tigers, providing trickery and movement from the right as Phil Brown's men defied the odds to stay up at Newcastle United's expense. Of course, the following season it all went to pot, Brown was sacked and Ian Dowie was brought in to save the day, except he failed miserably. Garcia's form earned him a first cap in 2008, and 2 years later he became the first Hull City player to ever play in a World Cup, starting as a striker in their 4-0 defeat to Germany. Robbie Slater. The second Premier League winner to enter this list, Robbie Slater spent 4 years in England at Blackburn, West Ham, Southampton and Wolves, but it was at the former where he managed to get his hands on the biggest prize in English football. He played 44 times for his country before retiring after the 1997 Confederations Cup. Mile Jedinak. A surprise find in 2011, nobody in England had much of a clue who Mile Jedinak was. Within 18 months, Crystal Palace would be in the Premier League, where the Aussie midfielder established himself as a key player for the side. In October 2014, Jedinak was named the best player in the Premier League and the 5th best player in Europe by the website Ooh La La Fantasy Football, based solely on Opta performance statistics, which just goes to show you can prove anything with stats. He did go on to win Asian Footballer of the Year the following month, had his free kick against Liverpool voted goal of the season, and was then flogged to Aston Villa within a year. Harry Kewell. Alright, well I did promise you this 11 would crank up a notch at some point, didn't I? The golden boy of Australian football during the late 90s and early 2000s, the Jinky winger was named the PFA Young Player of the Year at Leeds United, helping the club to a Champions League semi-final along the way. He never quite had the same impact at Anfield as he did at Ellen Road, but he did still win a Champions League and FA Cup for his troubles, and I'm guessing he probably made friends for life in the treatment room. At international level he's been a starlet, with 17 goals and 56 appearances for his country, including a priceless strike against Croatia, which qualified Australia for the knockout stages of the 2006 World Cup. Tim Cahill. Arguably the greatest Australian to have ever kicked a ball, or in his case headed it and then beat the piss out of the corner flag. Tim Cahill spent 8 seasons at Goodison Park, netting 68 goals and 278 appearances. So that's how they kept challenging for Europe with all those dodgy strikers. At international level he was a revelation. The attacking midfielder is the country's all-time record goal scorer with 48 goals in 96 games. He has 5 World Cup goals, the most of any Australian by a distance, and indeed scored the country's first ever against Japan. Mark Viduka. Mark Viduka might look like he spends his Sunday afternoons down the local chipper covered in grease, but when he could be bothered, he was one of the most fearsome strikers in the Premier League. His first touch was exquisite and his finishing lethal. Liverpool fans probably still have nightmares about the time he scored all 4 against them for Leeds United. A regular goal scorer for Leeds, Middlesbrough and sort of Newcastle, he was without a doubt the most dangerous Australian centre forward to ever grace the Premier League. The former Australia captain might have wanted to score more than just the 11 for his country though. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe.